My parents called a family meeting to demand I sell my new penthouse because my success was making my brother feel like a failure. They had no idea I already knew their little intervention was a desperate lie. So I set a trap of my own and let them walk right into it. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The call came on a Tuesday. It was the first Tuesday I had taken off in perhaps my entire adult life. I was sitting on a plush, velvet sofa that had cost more than my first car, sipping tea and watching the 10 a.m. sunlight flood the marble floor of my new penthouse. My body ached. Not from the move, I'd hired movers for that, but from a bone-deep exhaustion that felt like a low-grade fever. For the past 6 years, 80-hour work week hadn't been an exaggeration. It had been my baseline. It was how I'd paid for every textbook, every instant noodle dinner, and every credit hour of my computer science degree. It was how I'd graduated with honors, landed a dream job at a top tech firm, and, at 27, signed the papers on a downtown property that made my realtor's eyes water. I was, for the first time, deeply and profoundly, still. The silence of the apartment was my trophy. Then my phone buzzed, vibrating aggressively on the glass coffee table. It was my mother, Martha. I smiled, tapping accept and putting it on speaker. I assumed it was the call to gush over the photos I'd sent. "Rebecca, are you there?" Her voice was tight, thin. "Hi, Mom, I'm here, just enjoying the view. Did you see the picture of the—" "Rebecca, your father and I need to see you," she interrupted. The warmth vanished from the room. "We're having a family meeting tonight, 7 o'clock, at our house." "A family meeting?" I tried to laugh. "What is this, 1950? Did Ryan break the fine china?" "This isn't a joke," Harry, my father, said, his voice suddenly joining the call. He must have been on speaker, too. "This is serious. It's about your brother, it's about this apartment." My stomach hollowed out. What about my apartment? I just moved in. "That's the problem," my mother snapped. You're too much, Rebecca. You're flaunting it, you're hurting him." "Hurting him? Hurting Ryan? I bought a home. How does that hurt anyone?" There was a muffled sound, like my mother covering the receiver to hiss at my father. Then she was back, her voice dripping with forced, saccharine disappointment. "Your brother is in a very dark place, Rebecca. He feels like a failure. And you buying a penthouse, you getting that promotion, you're rubbing his nose in it. You're making him feel worthless." I sat up, the tea forgotten. My hands, which had just been calm, were now shaking. "Mom, that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. I worked for this. Ryan is 25 years old. His feelings are his own responsibility." "He is your brother," she shrieked, the civility breaking. "And his family is supposed to support him, not make him feel small. We are his parents. We are your parents. And we are telling you that you have created a problem and you need to fix it. 7 o'clock, don't be late." The line clicked dead. I stared at the phone, my reflection staring back from the black screen. A pale, shocked woman surrounded by the trappings of a success I was suddenly being told was a weapon. The silence I had cherished moments before now felt heavy, suffocating, and poisoned. I had just moved into my dream home, a place that was supposed to be my sanctuary, and my family had already found a way to turn it into a crime scene. The betrayal was worse than the exhaustion itself. The hours between the call and 7 p.m. crawled by. My beautiful, sun-drenched penthouse suddenly felt like a gilded cage. I paced the polished floors, my mind replaying every conversation, every choice. I had always been the responsible one, while Ryan was finding himself. A journey that involved a failed attempt at being a day trader, a disastrous stint as a music promoter, and a brief, expensive foray into lifestyle brand dropshipping. I was working. I'd worked weekends at a diner, coded for freelance clients until 3 a.m., and sacrificed every vacation, every party, every semblance of a normal 20s. My parents had enabled him every step of the way. His business ventures were funded by them, his rent, his car, his groceries, all covered by the bank of Mom and Dad. When I'd once, cautiously, asked if they were worried about his future, my mother had waved me off. "He's a sensitive boy, Rebecca. He just needs time to find his passion. You're different. You're tough." Tough was just another word for ignored. I changed out of my lounge clothes and into what I called my armor. A sharp, black blazer, dark jeans, and my hair led back into a severe, professional ponytail. If they wanted to treat this like a boardroom negotiation, I would dress the part. When I arrived at their house, the small, suburban tract home I'd grown up in, the tension was so thick I could smell it, like ozone before a storm. Ryan's beat-up car was in the driveway, naturally. I let myself in. They were all waiting in the living room, sitting on the faded floral sofa like a tribunal. My mother, Martha, her arms crossed. My father, Harry, staring at his hands. And Ryan. My brother looked pale and thin, but his eyes were sharp and resentful. He was wearing a new, expensive-looking hoodie. "You're late," my mother said. It was 7:02 p.m. "I'm here," I said, choosing to stand. "You said this was a meeting. What's the agenda?" "Don't be cold, Rebecca," my father mumbled, finally looking up. His face was gray with stress. "We're your family. Then stop treating me like an employee you're about to reprimand. Mom, Dad, Ryan, what is this?" Ryan spoke for the first time, his voice a sullen monotone. "So, the penthouse is nice." "It is," I said evenly. "Must be great," he sneered, "looking down on everyone from your glass tower. Must make you feel real big." "Ryan, stop," my mother said, placing a hand on his arm. She turned to me, her expression one of deep, practiced sorrow. "Honey, look at him, he's miserable. Ever since you announced you bought that place, he hasn't eaten. He barely leaves his room. He told us. He told us he feels like there's no point in even trying anymore, that you've taken all the success." "Taken it?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Success isn't a pie, Mom. Me having a slice doesn't mean there's less for him." "It is to him," she cried. "He feels eclipsed. You've always been the smart one, the driven one. Can't you, just once, think about someone else's feelings? Can't you see what this is doing to the family?" "What it is doing? You mean what I'm doing? By working hard?" I stared at them, the sheer, profound absurdity of it washing over me. "What is the solution here? What do you want me to do? Apologize for not failing?" "We want you to sell it," my father said bluntly. The words hung in the air. I actually, truly thought I had misheard him. "You want me to what?" "Sell the apartment," my mother said, her voice firm now. "It's too much. It's a symbol of division. It's not healthy for Ryan. Sell it, get something more modest. Maybe a small condo out in the suburbs. Use the rest of the money, too, to help your brother. Help him get on his feet. It would be a wonderful gesture of family unity." I looked from my mother's earnest, demanding face to my father's weak, pleading one. I looked at Ryan, who was now staring at me with a greedy, hopeful glint in his eyes. They had rehearsed this. They had actually sat down and decided that the appropriate response to my life's greatest achievement was for me to dismantle it for the sake of my brother's ego. I felt a sudden, cold calm settle over me. The shock was gone, replaced by a sharp, analytical clarity. This wasn't about feelings. This wasn't about Ryan's depression. This was something else. This was organized. It was desperate. And they had forgotten one crucial thing. "This is insane," I said, my voice flat. "You're insane." "We're your family," my mother shrieked again. "You owe us, you owe your brother. We're the ones who supported you, who fed you, who..." "Who what?" I cut her off. "Who told me to be tough? Who let me work 80-hour weeks while I put myself through school because you were funding Ryan's passion projects? What exactly do I owe you for?" I turned and walked to the door. "I'm not selling my home, and I'm not coming back here until you've all entered therapy. This conversation is over." I left them screaming my name, but I didn't look back. As I drove away, my hands steady on the wheel, I wasn't just angry. I was suspicious. The level of desperation didn't add up. Selling my penthouse was a ridiculously extreme solution to a problem of sibling rivalry. No, this wasn't about Ryan's feelings. They wanted something. They wanted my money, and they were clumsy enough to have just shown their entire hand. They had forgotten who I was. I wasn't just tough. I was a senior project manager at a tech firm. My entire job was to analyze risks, find hidden problems, and execute complex plans. And I was about to open an investigation into my own family. My devotion to my family, I realized, had been a one-way street. I'd spent my entire life trying to be the perfect, low-maintenance daughter. I got good grades, I didn't ask for money, and I built my life without ever once leaning on them. I'd believed this was a virtue. Now I saw they had viewed it as a convenience. My independence wasn't a source of pride for them. It was a green light to pour all their time, energy, and resources into Ryan. I remembered Christmases where my big gift would be a $50 gift card, while Ryan received a new laptop for his business. I remembered my college graduation, which they'd almost missed because Ryan was having a personal crisis. His car got towed. My sacrifices hadn't been sacrifices, they had been, in my parents' eyes, my duty. My success wasn't my own, it was an aberration, a disruption to the family's natural order, where all resources, emotional and financial, flowed to Ryan. Ryan was the primary antagonist, but he was a weak one. He was a black hole of need, created and fed by my parents, Martha and Harry. They were the true architects of this. My mother, with her ironclad belief in Ryan's sensitivity, and my father, with his spineless, passive agreement to her every whim. They were the ones who had cultivated this poisonous dynamic, and now they were trying to make me the antidote. The morning after the meeting, I sat in my home office. The skyline of the city spread out before me. I wasn't just a project manager. I had specialized in forensic data analysis before moving into management. I still had access to tools and databases that the average person didn't even know existed. They thought I was just a coder. They forgot my job was to find the truth hidden in the noise. I started with Ryan. His failed businesses were easy enough to track through public records. His last 3 LLCs, all registered to my parents' address, had been dissolved, each one leaving a trail of small debts. But that wasn't the big one. Then I looked at my parents. I started with their house. My name was still on some old utility bills as a resident, which gave me just enough of a foothold. I pulled the property records. My breath caught. My parents, Harry and Martha, had taken out a second mortgage on their home 6 months ago. My heart hammered against my ribs. They weren't wealthy. My father was a retired electrician on a modest pension. My mother had never worked. Their house, while old, was their only real asset, and they had nearly paid it off. Why, in their early 60s, would they suddenly take on that much debt? I cross-referenced the date of the loan with Ryan's social media. 6 months ago, he had posted a flurry of photos. He was standing next to a leased luxury SUV, holding keys to a small, sleek office space, and posting about his new investment consulting firm. The firm that, I now saw, had been officially dissolved just 3 weeks ago, citing insolvency. The pieces clicked into place with sickening precision. Ryan's big idea hadn't been funded by my parents' savings. It had been funded by their home, and he'd burned through it all. This wasn't about Ryan's feelings. This wasn't about my penthouse making him sad. This was about money. They were in financial ruin. But there was still a missing piece. The level of panic. The second mortgage was bad, but was it demand your daughter liquidate her assets bad? I needed to know the terms of that loan. I had a friend from college, Alex, who worked in the fraud department of a major bank. I called him. Alex, I need a favor. It's personal. I need to know the status of a loan. I can't give you many details, but I think my parents are victims of a predatory lender, and I need to know what I'm walking into. It was a white lie, but it was close enough to the truth. I gave him the address and my parents' names. He called me back an hour later, his voice grim. Becca, this isn't a normal second mortgage. This is a hard money loan. The interest rate is astronomical, and it looks like they defaulted on their first payment. There's a balloon payment due. In 10 days, if they don't pay it, the lender forecloses. Period. How much? I whispered. The balloon payment, with penalties, it's almost $150,000. I hung up the phone, the cold, analytical calm returning, but this time it was laced with ice. $150,000. They were 10 days from being homeless. That was why they needed me to sell the penthouse. It wasn't about Ryan's ego. It was a desperate, last-ditch cash grab. They were going to emotionally blackmail me into giving them the down payment from my sale to save their home, and they were going to let me believe I was doing it for family unity. They hadn't just coddled Ryan. They had destroyed their own lives for him. And now they were perfectly willing to destroy mine, too. I didn't call them. I let them stew. I let them wonder if their monstrous demand had severed me for good. The silence, I knew, would be working on them. My mother's self-righteous anger would be curdling into panic as the foreclosure date loomed. This was my turning point. The hurt and betrayal I'd felt in their living room was now forged into a cold, hard resolve. I was no longer the passive victim, the tough daughter. I was a strategist. My clever trap wasn't just the knowledge I now possessed. It was how I was going to use it. They had come to me with a lie, so I was going to let them build that lie into a mountain. I wasn't going to confront them with the truth. Not yet. I was going to let them think their emotional blackmail was working. I needed one more piece of evidence. I needed to know, for a fact, that Ryan wasn't just a failure, but a con artist. I needed to find out where that $150,000 had really gone. I hired a private investigator. It felt dramatic, but I was treating this like the corporate malfeasance it resembled. I gave the pie, a gruff ex-cop, everything I had on Ryan, his dissolved LLCs, his social media, his leased car. I want to know where the money from this hard money loan went, I said. I don't just want bank statements. I want receipts. I want to know who he was with and what he was buying. While the pie worked, I set the first part of my trap. I texted my mother. I've been thinking about what you said. Her reply was almost instantaneous. Oh, Rebecca, I'm so glad. We were so worried about you. The fake, cloying warmth was back. I'm not agreeing to anything, I wrote, but I am willing to talk, not at your house. I'm having a housewarming party this Saturday, just a small thing. I want you, Dad, and Ryan to come. We can talk about options. A party, she replied, the suspicion evident even over text. I don't know if that's appropriate. It's at my new place. My penthouse, I typed, twisting the knife just a little. I'd like my family to be there. We can have a real, calm discussion. My treat. I was baiting the hook with the very thing they hated. By inviting them into my glass tower, I was forcing them to confront their jealousy head-on. They would come. They were desperate, and they would see this as their chance to corner me, to finally break me down in the very monument of my betrayal. They would see it as their final battlefield. The Pie's report landed in my inbox 2 days later. It was worse than I could have imagined. The $150,000 was gone. It hadn't been invested in a business. There was no office, no software, no employees. Ryan had spent it, all of it, in 6 months. The report was a sickening litany of Ryan's lifestyle brand. $40,000 in cash withdrawals at high-end casinos. $25,000 on the lease for the luxury SUV. $30,000 on designer clothes, watches, and sneakers. $15,000 on dinners, clubs, and bottle service for a crowd of influencer friends. The rest was a blur of high-end travel, electronics, and subscription services. He hadn't failed at a business. He had never even started one. He had taken my parents' entire future, liquidated it, and snorted it, worn it, and driven it. He was a fraud. A common, pathetic thief who had stolen from the 2 people who loved him most. And my parents, they had either known and were lying, or they were so willfully blind they believed his stories. Either way, they were complicit in this. Their demand that I sell my home was an attempt to make me pay for Ryan's 6-month party. I printed the entire report. I put the casino receipts, the photos of his shopping sprees, and the car lease agreement into a neat, manila folder. I placed it in my office, right next to the public foreclosure notice I'd printed for their home. The family meeting they had demanded was over. My housewarming party on Saturday, that was going to be an intervention, but I wasn't the one being cornered. Saturday arrived. The weather was perfect, a clear, bright blue sky that made the city skyline sparkle. My penthouse, which had felt so cold and poisoned after that first call, was now my fortress. I'd set the stage perfectly. I'd had the party catered, champagne on ice, exquisite hors d'oeuvres. I'd invited 2 other guests who my family wouldn't know, my lawyer David and his wife. I'd introduced them simply as my good friends. My family arrived at 6 p.m., an hour before the party was meant to start, just as I'd planned. They stepped out of the private elevator that opened directly into my foyer, and their reactions were immediate and visceral. My father, Harry, just stared, his eyes wide, looking up at the 20-foot ceilings like he was in a cathedral. My mother, Martha, pursed her lips, her eyes darting everywhere, cataloging every expensive finish, her face a mask of bitter resentment. And Ryan looked furious. He saw my home not as something I'd earned, but as something I had taken from him. "This is a lot, Rebecca," my mother said, her voice tight as she clutched her handbag. "It's what I wanted," I said smoothly, taking her coat. "Drink champagne." "We're not here to drink," Ryan snapped, already striding into the main living area. "We're here to talk, to fix the mess you made." "Ryan," my father warned, but his voice was weak. "No, Dad," Ryan whirled on me, his face red and blotchy. "You think this is funny, throwing a party, inviting us up here to laugh at us, to show us how much better you are." "I invited you here to talk, just like I said," I replied calmly. I glanced at my lawyer David, who was standing by the window, sipping water and observing. "Mom, Dad, Ryan, you're right, we need to talk about the problem. You said my success is hurting Ryan. You said I should sell this place for family unity." "We did," my mother said, lifting her chin, sensing a crack in my resolve. "I'm so glad you're finally seeing reason, honey. It's the right thing to do. It would mean so much to your brother. It would give him a fresh start." "A fresh start," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "I see. And how would selling my home give Ryan a fresh start exactly? What's the plan? I sell, give him the money, and he, tries another business." "He needs capital," my mother insisted. He had some bad luck, the market, "The market," I said, my voice losing its warmth. "Is that what he told you? The market for what? Casinos? Designer watches?" Ryan's face went white, my mother's eyes flickered. I don't know what you mean." "Oh, I think you do." I walked over to my office, picked up the manila folder and walked back. I tossed it onto the marble coffee table. "I mean this." Ryan looked at the folder like it was a snake. "Go on, Ryan," I said. "Open it. It's your business plan, isn't it? Let's show Mom and Dad what your bad luck looks like." He didn't move. My father, his hands trembling, stepped forward and opened it. He pulled out the first document, the casino cash withdrawal receipts. He shuffled through them, his face growing paler. He saw the photos of the leased SUV. He saw the credit card statements filled with logos for Gucci, for Louis Vuitton, for clubs I'd never even heard of. What is this, Ryan?" my father whispered, holding up a receipt. This is a watch. It says it cost $10,000. "It's a fake," Ryan shouted, lashing out. "She's trying to trap me. She's making it up, Mom, tell him." My mother looked from the receipts to me, her eyes filled with pure venom. You spied on him? You spied on your own brother? How dare you?" "How dare I?" I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You came into my life and demanded I liquidate my single greatest asset to soothe his feelings. You lied to me. You tried to manipulate me. I just did my due diligence. This is where your fresh start went, Mom. This is the business you funded." I let the first bomb drop. Or should I say, the business you took out a $150,000 hard money loan for, the one you defaulted on, the one that's getting your house foreclosed on in. Oh, is it 10 days now, or 9? My mother physically recoiled, her hand flying to her chest. My father just sank onto the sofa, the papers slipping from his grasp. He looked utterly broken. You knew, my mother stammered. Of course I knew, I said. You were never here about Ryan's feelings. You were here because you're about to be homeless. You were going to let me sell my home, to pay for his party, and you were going to lie to my face about why. You weren't here for an intervention. You were here for a bailout. You're a monster, my mother whispered, tears of rage in her eyes. He's your brother. And he's a thief, I thundered, my voice finally rising. He's a con man, he stole your future, he stole your home, and you let him. And now you have the nerve, the audacity, to come here and demand I set myself on fire to keep you all warm? No, the Bank of Rebecca is closed. Ryan, seeing his shield, my mother, crumble, tried one last, pathetic tactic. He lunged at the table, grabbing the papers and tearing them. Lies, they're all lies, he screamed, his face a mask of childish rage. You just hate me because I'm the one they love. You've always been jealous. That's enough, David, my lawyer said, stepping forward. His voice was calm but carried an authority that froze everyone in the room. Mr. and Mrs. Last Name, I am Rebecca's legal counsel. I'd advise you all to stop talking. Ryan, destroying those documents is pointless. We have copies of everything. My family just stared at him, the full weight of the situation finally crushing them. Their lie was gone. Their leverage was gone. They were exposed, in a penthouse they despised, in front of a lawyer they didn't know I had. The trap had snapped shut. The silence that followed was heavy and final. My mother, for the first time in her life, looked like she had no words. My father just stared at the floor. And Ryan, cornered and exposed, vibrated with a pathetic, impotent rage. Get him out of here, my mother finally said, not to me but to my father. Harry, make Ryan go wait in the car. No, I said. He stays, he's an adult, he's going to hear all of this. My mother's eyes snapped back to me. You did this, she hissed. You brought a stranger, a lawyer, into our family business. You set this up to humiliate us. You were going to let your son make me homeless, I countered, my voice ill. Ice, you don't get to talk to me about humiliation. You don't get to talk to me about family. I sat down on the armchair opposite them. I was in control. Here's what I know. You have 9 days until the bank forecloses on your home, the home I grew up in. You owe $150,000 plus penalties, which you do not have. Ryan has no job, no prospects, and a history of fraud. You have no savings because you gave them all to him. You are, to put it plainly, ruined. And you came here today hoping to con me into ruin with you. Rebecca, please, my father whispered. It was the first time he'd spoken. She's your mother, he's your brother, we made a mistake. We were scared, we didn't know. We didn't know he'd spend it all like that. He told us it was market volatility. He told us he just needed a little more to turn it all around. He lied, Dad, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. He has been lying to you for years, and you've been lying to yourselves. You chose to believe him because it was easier than admitting your sensitive boy is a 25-year-old predator. Ryan, who had been sulking by the window, finally broke. She's turning you against me. Mom, Dad, she's trying to poison you. I am going to turn it around. I have a new plan, a crypto venture. It's a sure thing. I just need a little more liquidity. This final, desperate lie was so transparently pathetic that even my mother flinched. She looked at her son, really looked at him, and the last veil of her delusion seemed to tear. She saw him for what he was, a hollow, desperate shell, repeating the same tired script. Shut up, Ryan, she said, her voice flat and dead. Just shut up. That one sentence, more than anything else, broke him. His face crumpled. The bravado, the anger, the entitlement, it all evaporated, leaving behind a terrified, sniveling child. He finally understood that the game was over. The well was dry. I now had my second, more powerful confrontation. This wasn't just about the pie report. This was about the future. Here is what's going to happen, I said, leaning forward. This is not a negotiation. This is my one and only offer. You will listen and you will accept. David, my lawyer, stepped forward again. What Rebecca is about to propose, he said, is incredibly generous. I have advised her against it, but she has chosen to offer it on several non-negotiable conditions. I looked at my parents. First, I am not selling my home, ever. Get that thought out of your heads. Second, I am not giving you $150,000. I am not paying for Ryan's bad luck. You will lose your house. You need to accept that. It is the consequence of your actions. My mother let out a small, strangled sob, but I continued. However, I said, I will not see you on the street. I will put a deposit down on a small 2-bedroom rental apartment for you and Dad. 1 year's lease. It will be clean, it will be safe, and it will be all you get from me. After that, you will live on your pension. I then turned to Ryan. For you, you get 2 options. Option A, you are cut off today. No apartment, no money, nothing. I will, however, give my PI report to the police and let them investigate you for fraud and elder financial abuse against our parents. Option B, you will tomorrow morning enroll in a trade school. Electrician, plumbing, welding, I don't care. I will pay for the tuition, directly to the school. I will pay for your shared apartment with Mom and Dad for 1 year, and that's it. You will get a job. You will contribute. You will start behaving like an adult. If you drop out, if you miss a single class, the offer is rescinded and we revert to option A. You can't do that, Ryan whimpered. He's right, David, the lawyer, interjected smoothly. She can't force you to go to school, but she absolutely can forward her evidence to the district attorney, and I can assure you they would be very interested in your business activities. The room was silent. The family unity they had tried to bludgeon me with was now a weapon in my hand. I was offering them a lifeline, not the one they wanted, but the one they deserved. A chance for my parents to have a roof over their heads, and a final, last-ditch chance for my brother to not be a complete and total failure. The choice was theirs. My mother and father sat on my sofa, 2 shrunken, gray figures, completely defeated. The party was, of course, not happening. My lawyer's wife had quietly let the caterers go. The champagne sat warming on the counter. We will take it, my father whispered, not looking at me. We'll take the offer, Rebecca, thank you. What? Ryan shrieked, whirling on my father. Dad, no, you're letting her win. This is our money she's playing with. Her success came from us. We raised her. We paid for. You paid for nothing, I shouted, finally standing up. The last thread of my patience had snapped. I paid for everything. I paid for my food, my books, my tuition. I paid for it by working 80-hour weeks in a diner while you were. What, Ryan? What were you doing at 19? Oh, right. Trying to be a DJ. Using Mom's credit card to buy equipment. Rebecca, my father started. No, I'm done. I am done being the quiet, tough one. You want to know why I'm successful? Because while you were teaching him it was okay to be a sensitive, coddled failure, I was learning how to survive. While you were bailing him out, I was building a life. I didn't take success from anyone. I earned it, and you are not taking it from me. I pointed to the door. This is the final meeting. You will take the deal, or you will get out of my home, and if you get out, you will never, ever speak to me again. David will be in touch tomorrow with the lease for the apartment and the enrollment forms for the trade school. Decide. Now. This was the showdown. Not the one they had planned, full of tears and emotional manipulation, but a real one. A cold, hard financial and legal reckoning. My mother, Martha, looked at Ryan. Her face was a ruin of conflicting emotions. I could see the decades of love and enablement warring with the fresh, raw, agonizing betrayal. She saw her son, red-faced and trembling, a 25-year-old toddler. And she saw me, standing tall in a home I had built, holding all the cards. She made her choice. Harry, she said, her voice hollow, take Ryan to the car. Mom, Ryan's voice cracked. Mom, no, you're choosing her. She's offering us a roof, Ryan, my father said, his voice thick with shame. She's offering you a future. What are you offering us? More lies, more debt. This was it, the final, triumphant moment. It wasn't just me breaking free. It was my parents, finally, agonizingly, breaking free from him. The spell was broken. The dynamic that had ruled our family for 25 years had just been shattered. Ryan stared at them, his mouth open. The realization that his two primary enablers, his human shields, were gone, it destroyed him. He didn't yell, he didn't scream, he just deflated. The anger, the entitlement, all of it drained away, leaving a vacant, lost young man. "Fine," he muttered, brushing past my father and heading for the elevator. "Whatever, I don't care." But he did. I had won. He had lost, and for the first time he had lost completely. My parents stood. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. We'll wait for the call from your lawyer," he said. My mother stopped in the foyer. She turned back to me, her face aged a decade in 1 hour. "You know, Rebecca," she said, her voice a low quiver, I always knew you were strong. I never knew you were this strong." It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was an admission. It was the first time in my life she had ever acknowledged my strength as a virtue, and not as an excuse to ignore me. "I am who you taught me to be, Mom," I said. "The tough one." They left. The elevator doors slid shut, leaving me alone in my vast, beautiful, and finally peaceful penthouse. The downfall of Ryan was quiet, not public. There was no grand explosion, just the pathetic fizzle of a life built on nothing. He enrolled in the plumbing program at the local community college. The pictures he posted on social media, once filled with flashy cars and fake parties, were now gone. I heard from a cousin that he was, for the first time in his life, actually working. He had a part-time job at a hardware store to pay for his gas. My parents lost their house. The foreclosure went through, as I'd known it would. I kept my promise. I had David, my lawyer, manage everything. He secured them a clean, simple 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet complex across town. I never went to see it. I paid the lease as promised, and my involvement with their finances ended there. My relationship with them is changed. It's not warm. I don't know if it ever will be again. I see them on major holidays at a neutral location like a restaurant. The conversations are polite, sterile, and short. We talk about the weather. We talk about my work in vague terms. We do not ever talk about Ryan, or the penthouse, or the money. The betrayal is a high, thick wall between us, and none of us has any interest in tearing it down. My mother's resentment is still there, a simmering ember, but it's now overshadowed by her fear. And, I think, a tiny, reluctant sliver of respect. About 6 months after the intervention, I was working late in my home office. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Ryan. "Passed my midterm. The instructor says I'm good at it." I stared at the message for a full minute. It was the first time he had ever contacted me to share a piece of good news that wasn't a lie. I thought about the casino receipts, the lies, the hatred in his eyes. I thought about the family he had almost destroyed. I typed back. A simple 2-word reply. "Good, keep going." I put my phone down and turned back to my monitor, the city lights glittering outside my window. My penthouse was no longer a symbol of division. It was my sanctuary. It was my fortress. It was the monument to the fact that I had not only survived my family's toxicity, but I had overcome it. I was free. I had saved myself, and in the end, in my own way, I had even offered them a path to save themselves. The peace I felt was absolute. It was a peace I had built with my own 2 hands, and no one was ever going to take it from me again.